Hello and welcome. This is a Radical SR3 SL and the BAC Mono. These are purpose-built cars to go around corners as fast as possible. Now, why we're going to look at them today is because lately on the channel I've been finding some incredible cars with great handling. So I thought, you know what? Let's take a look at these vehicles because this is what they are literally made for. Since these vehicles do have basically the same purpose, I'm going to be talking about one and then just keep referencing the other one with it because, as I said, they are basically the same thing. Both of these cars, when it comes to a straight line, are terrible. They both produce very low power. And keep in mind, the BAC Mono has no forced induction. There's nothing you can add to it. You just have to stick with the standard engine that comes out of a Ford Mondeo. Now, the Radical, on the other hand, yes, it does have slightly more power. I think it's like 50 brake horsepower difference, and that's because this car can get a large RPM turbocharger. So the minute the rev counter reaches the high RPMs, then you feel the boost kick in. But that's also a problem. The minute the boost kicks in and you aren't prepared, it throws off the handling of the vehicle. And that's all that these cars are made for. Top speed is not what these cars are suited for. As I said earlier, it is to just get around a corner as fast as possible. And that's what these cars offer. Now, the BAC Mono, in my opinion, I feel like it does handle better. Car feels just a lot more race car-esque than the Radical. You are able to push the car around a corner a lot more faster because of the stability that the BAC Mono actually gives. Now, the Radical, with it having more power down the straightaway, it should be able to pull away from the BAC Mono, and that's exactly what it does. When it comes to exiting a corner and carrying more speed, that's where the BAC shines. And talking about shining, we're gonna turn the spotlight onto the Radical. Now, I had no idea this car was in the game. I was just scrolling through Brand Central and I saw the logo. I clicked on it and I saw that the car was there because I had no intention or any reason to know that this car was in the game. But the BAC, at least we know, we have that 1 hour event where you can only use the BAC. Now the Radical, it doesn't get as much love, and I don't know why. These cars are basically the same. I don't know, I feel like that's going to trigger someone for some reason, but they serve the exact same purpose. If you don't want the BAC, you can get the Radical. If you don't want the Radical, you can get the BAC. The Radical, it just doesn't perform as well as the BAC. Now, that's funny because the Radical, as I said earlier, does have slightly more brake horsepower. However, it does weigh almost 200 kgs more. And yes, power should outweigh lightness, but it doesn't in this case. The car feels underpowered, and somehow this lightweight vehicle feels kind of overweight. And the thing is, you can go from clipping point to clipping point, no matter what you're in. Whether it's the BAC or the Radical, the car will hit every apex you point at it. And that's what I can appreciate about both of these vehicles. I know I said I'm going to shine the spotlights on the Radical, and I'm still talking about both cars, but that's one thing that's guaranteed about these cars' handling. You're not going to receive understeer, but with the Radical, you can expect some oversteer. As I said, the minute that boost kicks in, the rear end is throwing out, and yes, you can have a bit more fun with it, but at the end of the day, the car is kind of slow. As you can see, I actually went off because of me climbing the curb and actually touching grass. With the car touching grass, that's a big no-no. You will, as you saw, get catapulted into the barrier. The car has to stay on circuit. It does not like curbs at all, so if you are gonna go for the apex, don't hit it. Ride alongside it and you will be golden. The Radical is really a vehicle that players look over, and that's because the car isn't that good. Yes, okay, it's fast around corners, but when it comes to a straightaway, the car gets rinsed by anything else. It doesn't have that much power, so when it comes to top speed, it lets itself down. Yes, acceleration out of the corner is there, but the minute you get on a straightaway, if the circuit has a long straight, don't even think of picking a radical. And that's the more powerful one. So obviously, you're not gonna take the BAC. Now you see, I actually spun out. That's because the power kicked in now when I was almost exiting the turn, and I just wasn't ready for it. Spun out, lost control. But that's the thing, with the radical, you will still have a chance of losing control or having to actually drive the vehicle. I know I said I'm putting a spotlight on the radical, and then everything I said about the radical, I mentioned the BAC. But that just goes to show you that these cars are interlinked. No matter what you say about the radical, the same thing can be applied about the BAC. There are slight differences, but if we actually do take a step back and look at both of them, they are the same thing. Now, one thing I do commend these vehicles on is recently I purchased a Logitech G29. That's a racing steering wheel for, well, the budget racing steering wheel. Now, these cars are perfect for learning how to use a wheel because of how snappy and direct they are, and they don't have that much power where now, oh, you fighting it, you're losing control. You still are able to learn how to pick up on it, and it's a great starting base to learn on when you are starting with the wheel. That's why I feel like I am making a little bit of progress with using these vehicles. So yes, for me personally, that's the only reason I actually wanted to own these vehicles, because I knew they are going to be great at handling. Now, one thing why I'm not going to say, oh, you have to own this, this is the best car I've driven, or the usual things that I say. These cars don't make me feel any sort of way. There's no excitement, there's no joy while being behind these vehicles. I've driven cars slower than them that weigh a lot more, have less power, and somehow had more fun than in these vehicles. There's like no soul when driving these vehicles, and personally, I don't. If a vehicle's like that, I'll never use it again. So my likelihood of touching the radical again is 0 to none. The BAC, yes, because the BAC does everything the radical does, but does it slightly better. That's why if you're deciding which one to pick, I say use the BAC and get it, because as I said earlier, you can also use it in at 1 hour events and make some money. So if you have to pick between a radical and BAC, pick the BAC hands down. But if you are looking for a good track vehicle that is a lot of fun and handles great, get the Lamborghini Aventador S. With all that being said, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.